particular verse of Hebrew is choshek, which comes from a root chashak, which means to grow or become dark. With this in mind, we recognize that the more we stray from Elohim's instruction and allow falsehoods to dictate, or the doctrines of men, that we will continue to slip into the darkness that is on the face of the deep. In Matthew 15, 2 through 3, Yeshua is having a discussion with the Pharisees. And it's over the hand washing. The Pharisees asked Yeshua, why do your disciples not wash their hands according to the traditions of the fathers? Yeshua responds, why do you put the traditions of the fathers above the commandments of God? Why do you put the traditions above the commandments of Elohim? What do we see here? They're saying traditions of the fathers versus the commandments of Elohim. Okay? Literally, in the Aramaic, it doesn't say the commandments of Elohim. It says specifically the commandments of Yahuwah in the Aramaic of Matthew. So, why are you taking man-made doctrines and putting them in the place or giving them authority over the commandments of the most powerful entity in existence and beyond that gave them to us specifically to observe? When we don't study, when we don't pray, when we don't take time to commune with Elohim, we get dragged farther and farther away, and we become just like Isha without Ish, more gullible to take in whatever we receive. This is why it's so important that whatever we learn, whether it comes from me or whether it comes from anybody, take it, break it down, and discern whether it is or isn't. And with me, if it's wrong, then you have a responsibility to come to me and say, you're wrong, so that I can adjust it in my life. Because what you've done is you've saved me from getting a millstone strapped around my neck and having to chafe. Okay? Anyway, Yeshua said that we have to pay attention to the commandments of Yahuwah over the traditions of men. Because when we continue to slip into the darkness, we look at the word deep. Tehom is the first time that we see the tav as the root of a word in Torah. And if you look at Bereshis, you'll see the word tehom. It is the first time that we see the tav as the root of a word in Torah. And the word tehom means deep. It also means an abyss. Okay? And we have to keep in mind the word abyss, because we're going to see the word abyss later on down the road in our studies. The root of tehom is hum, which means to distract. What does false doctrine do? It distracts us. It comes from another root, hamam, meaning to confuse. What happens when we get distracted? We don't know which is right or which is wrong. It causes confusion. Then it causes commotion, which is another meaning for this word hamam. And ultimately it means to destroy, that it leads to destruction. We see people walk away from all that God stuff because it's all a bunch of pish-posh, because nobody can agree on anything. We see entire congregations fall apart because something is taught that somebody doesn't agree with, and everybody steps away because, that's not the way I was taught. Or they step away because they become offended at something. We see a lot of destruction that comes about when we are in Tehom. The Tav is the furthest letter from the Aleph and the Aleph Beta. It is the 22nd letter. Another idea that we have when we are in Tehom, when we are in this state of confusion, the state of distraction, at the verge of destruction, is that we are at the top. We are at the farthest point from the Aleph. The Aleph is what? The Aleph, the first time we see the Aleph in Torah, is right there at Bereshit 1:1 in the third word in Hebrew, in the word Elohim. And we've said that in the Aleph we have 2 yods and a vav, numerical values 26, equals the same gematria as the name of our Elohim. So the Aleph is a representation directly of Yehovah Elohim. But if we're over here at the Tav, then we're at the furthest point away from our Elohim. And something has to happen to bring us back. Fortunately, something does happen to bring us back. Elohim loves us, loved us, still loves us in such a way that in His name He made a way to restore and redeem the Adam. He was not willing to allow us to remain formless and empty. We look at Yochanan 3:16 that says, what? For Elohim so loved the world. Yes. Not that He loved it so much. Right. It means that He loved it in such a way that He was willing to give His uniquely begotten Son. Okay? The Word had to become flesh in the form of the Son in order to shed His blood so that the Tav could be repaired. What else does Tav mean? Tav means a vehicle of sacrifice, that the Son, in the name of the Father, Yehoshua, that means Yehovah is our restoration, our redemption, our deliverance, because in Hebrew there is no such word, or there is not a word that exists for salvation. He is our restorer, our redeemer, and our deliverer. That He sent the Word to die on the vehicle of sacrifice. The Tav means vehicle of sacrifice. The Tav is also a letter that represents the covenant marker, so that the blood could be shed at the covenant marker, so that a covenant that we broke, Elohim didn't break the covenant. We broke the covenant. The covenant that we broke could be renewed. And that's why we call it Brit Hadashah. We talked about this last week a little bit. So, He made a way in His name to restore and redeem the Adam, that is, you and I. We see this in the Hebrew of Bereshit 1:1, not in the fact that Elohim created space, time, and matter, but that Elohim put into motion a plan of redemption. I'm going to do this one more time, because I want it to really sink in exactly what we're saying in the Hebrew, so that when we go and we read this in Yochanan, that it really, really makes a lot of sense to us. And we've done this a few times, but I want to do it one more time, just so we really, really get it to sink in. That in Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et haaretz, we have the entire plan of redemption put in place. It's interesting that the entire plan of redemption is put in place, that we have this line that says what it says, before what verse 2 says. Verse 2 says what? That the world was unformed and void. A plan of redemption was put in place before the transgression ever took effect, or before we transgressed. In Bereshit, what do we understand? We have an enlarged bait. The rabbis tell us that it alludes to the fact that the bait is covered by another letter, in this case a pei. Beit means house. Pei means voice, means the word, communication. So the voice or the word over the house. We have a word here that's resh, that means authority. So the voice over the house has the authority in what? Here's the yod. Now, yod, we've said that it's the first mark. Yod is the only letter that is not comprised of other letters. It stands alone. it's complete within itself, but no other letter can be formed without a yod. And we say that when the paper touches, or when the pen touches the paper, a yod is formed. Now we form, in this case, a vav, and that when the pen leaves the paper, the yod is complete. It is the first and the last mark of any letter that comprises everything in the middle. And if we have the first, and if we have the last, and we put one of the two letters from the middle in it, we have a word that is emet. Emet is a Hebrew word for truth. That no letter can be formed without the yod is a representation of the power and the ability of Yehovah Elohim to create. So the yod represents the truth, power, and the ability of the first and the last, which is the word. So the truth, power, and the ability of the word in there's the tav, covenant. So what do we have in Bereshit? That the word, the voice over the house, has the authority by the truth, power, and the ability of Yehovah Elohim to create, or restore in this case, a covenant. Okay? The very first word of Bereshit tells us that Elohim has the ability and that he's going to restore the covenant. Now, the second word is bara. Bara. Now, we've said that in Yochanan, we read that in the beginning was the Word was with Elohim, the Word was Elohim. Then it goes on to tell us that nothing was created without the Word, that everything was created with the Word. And without the Word, nothing was created. Okay? Bara means created. Created. We think about the Word and created. In Yochanan, in John 1:14, it says, "And the Word became flesh and tabernacled among us." The Word became flesh and tabernacled among us, and we say in John 3:16 that Elohim loved us in such a way that he sent his uniquely begotten Son. If we put all that together, what do we get? We take bara, the one that we understand created. Now we have bar, which is an Aramaic word for son. And what we have left is a letter that represents Yehovah Elohim. So the authority that's been given to the Word over the house to create a covenant has been given to the Son of Yehovah Elohim, who came in his name as Yeshua. Yeshua. Okay? Elohim, again, we see bara Elohim. We understand that this came from the one true Elohim. That through his Word and his Mashiach, if we would pay attention to that truth, power, and ability, that we would receive the instruction of Elohim. We have to believe and receive and apply. Because what does Jacob tell us? Jacob says that faith without works is nothing. You have to put forth an effort in your faith. Otherwise, what happens? Isha and Isha are separate, and we're all gullible. So we stop here. In the English, it simply says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth." If we read this the way it's supposed to be read, we would actually read, "In the beginning, Elohim created through the Aleph and the Tav." This is a subject changer. It's called the Et, that points to the nouns that are receiving the action. So, through the Aleph and the Tav, something was done. Through the Word, something was done. That Hashamayim, the realm of our Elohim, and Haaretz, the realm of the Adam, you and I, something's going to happen. What's happened because of the transgression? They've separated. The glory was taken off. He had to make skins to cover them. What is going to restore all of this? We say it's through the Aleph and the Tav, but the Aleph and the Tav became flesh in order to do this. So we go over here and we see there's the Vav, which is flesh, and there again is the Aleph and the Tav. That it was through the Aleph and the Tav becoming flesh that the glory that we lost in the transgression from the realm of our Elohim would be restored to Haaretz, you and I. There was in the beginning a means of restoration, a means of redemption, and a means of deliverance from our desire to transgress. There was a means created to restore us back to where we were. So we keep that in mind and we move on. And this is kind of in here. It says that Elohim put into motion a plan of redemption where the Word would become the authority over the house by the truth, power, and the ability of a covenant, and would become the manifestation of the Word, the flesh, as the Son of Yahuwah, coming in His name to restore the reigns of the heaven to the earth by the power of His eternal covenant. We see that Yeshua, and Paul tells us in Hebrew, from the commentary, Paul tells us in Hebrews, that Mashiach, as the Son over His house, of whom we are all part. So if we are a part of the house of Mashiach, then we understand that we must believe and receive in order to receive the blessings that come from that house. Ultimately, whose house is it? It's the house of the Father, right? It's the house of Ab. Whose house is it? Beit means house. The only thing we have left, it is the house of Yahuwah Elohim. We believe and receive. Yochanan, as we'll read in just a second, also says that those who would believe and receive would be given the authority to do what? Become the children of Elohim.
Yes.
We enter into His household. We are under His authority. We are under the authority of Mashiach. And as Paul also tells us, that I can do all things through Mashiach, who strengthens me, because what? I have the anointing of Yahuwah. Mashiach means the anointing of Yahuwah within me. Okay? So there's a whole lot of things going on in this first verse that we miss if we simply say that, oh, well, God created space, time, and matter, and everything was ugly, and then He created light, and He created a firmament, and He created... So we have to look at it. What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? We say He created a firmament, and we'll get into that study next week. Anyway, so this verse is the blueprint of restoration and redemption, and it is the verse on which the balance of the Torah, as well as Brit Hadashah, the Gospels, is built. Everything in Torah, everything in the Gospels, leads up to this happening. Okay? Leads up to the coming of Yeshua, His teaching us, and then His death, burial, and resurrection to make a way for us. So, in verse 3, we see this plan put into action. In verses 4 and 5, we see the effect taking place. Verse 3, what happens? It says, and Elohim said, let there be light. And there was light. Verse 4, and Elohim saw the light, that it was good, and Elohim divided the light from the darkness. Verse 5, and Elohim called the light day, and the darkness He called night, and there was evening and there was morning one day. Who is the light of the world? Yeshua. What does Yeshua say? He says, I am the light of the world. He admits to it. But think about this, that Elohim called the light day and the darkness He called night. And here's something that we really have to grasp. very important phrase in this verse. And there was evening and